Everything you need to have total happiness and fulfillment and success and love in your life, you already have. You already have it. Right now, wherever you are, whoever you are, you have it right this minute. Just a matter of deciding to believe that. A woman asked me one time, what are the blocks to my happiness? She said, what are the blocks? I want to know the blocks. I said, the belief that you have blocks. You believe you have blocks. As soon as you believe you have blocks, you create the need to have blocks. And now you want to find out what the blocks are. There are no blocks out there. If you send them all away, stop believing that you'll have blocks. Then you stop looking for the blocks, and you stop defending the blocks, and you look for something else. People tend to blame circumstances for their unhappiness. They say, someone close to me is sick, and that makes me unhappy. And I say to them, no, that doesn't make you unhappy. Someone else close to you is sick that cannot make you unhappy. And they say, well, how is that possible? What do you mean? They're sick and I'm unhappy and they must be making me unhappy. I say, no, supposing that same person was sick and you didn't know about it. You just didn't know they were sick. Could you be unhappy? Well, of course not. How could I be unhappy about something I didn't know about? Well, they were sick. Their sickness didn't cause you to be unhappy. Their sickness existed independent of you. It's when you find out about it and process it and think about it in a certain way and you say, oh, that shouldn't be happening. Oh, that's awful. Or, oh, that's my friend. Or, that's my mother. Or, those things shouldn't be happening to me. People don't want to take the responsibility and say, I am making myself unhappy by what I see in life. Now, you may not want to be joyful about someone close to you being sick, but you have to be responsible for what's going on inside of you. My job was to teach people how to find methods to be able to manage their emotions more effectively. I now believe that you have to be the method. Okay? There is no method that you can find. You can't rely on a method any more than if you're overweight, you can rely on a diet, or if you're smoking, you can rely on a cure or hypnotism or some kind of thing external to yourself. Or if you want to be religious, you can't rely on someone else to do it for you. It's that being that is the big difference. I believe I was directed to help people to understand that they have greatness within them and not to fear that greatness. That the reason people are not good at getting what they want out of life is not so much that they don't have the skills or the abilities, but in fact they don't think that they deserve it. Or if they do think they deserve it, they're afraid of it because it's bigger than I am. And there's a truth out there in the universe someplace, however it works, and I'm studying this now for some books I'll be writing in the future, that says you are not going to get it all. You are it all. You are not going to find happiness. You are happiness. You bring happiness to what you do in life rather than trying to get happiness out of what you do. Big difference between those two premises. Because you're not searching for happiness anymore when you have it within you. I always tell people I'm not in the pleasure business. Right? I'm in the happiness business or the joy business, not in the pleasure business, even though pleasure's great. The distinction I make here is that when you become enlightened, you begin to find happiness in the absences of pleasure in your life. You can find happiness in that. You can embrace your colds, if you will, your headaches or your backaches or whatever, as opportunities. Rather than saying that if I don't have all pleasure, then I can't be happy, what you say is, I am happy even with the things that I don't like that are going on in my life right now. So you learn to find joy in those and embrace those things rather than trying to always send them away. And the suffering that you're experiencing, if you just stop right now and look at your payoffs for it and why you continue to do it, you will see that your suffering comes from wanting the world to be different than it is, or wanting somebody in the world to be different than they are. And when you stop that, when you just accept rather than want, then your suffering has to go out the window with it. And this is not to say that you can't desire things. You don't even have to say you can't want things. You can certainly want anything. But to need it for me to be happy must go. To understand what we're talking about here, you must understand that bringing happiness to something is very much different than trying to get it out of something. And when you are bringing it to something, then you always have it. When you're looking for it, it will always elude you. Always. There is no place that God is not. Remind yourself of this every day. It has been said that God sleeps in the minerals, rests in the vegetables, walks in the animals, and thinks in us. Think of God as a presence rather than a person, a presence that allows a seed to sprout, that moves the stars across the sky, and simultaneously moves a thought across your mind. A presence that grows the grass and grows your fingernails all at the same time. This presence is everywhere, therefore it must also be in you. And if it's everywhere, it must be in all that you perceive to be missing from your life. In some inexplicable way, you're already connected to all that you'd like to attract into your life by the presence of this universal, all-powerful spirit called God. You may have read about some of the great saints in India. They seem to possess the magical powers of instant manifestation. Their presence appears to heal the sick, and they communicate a sense of divine bliss and peace to all those that they encounter. One saint was asked by a reporter from the West, "Are you God?" The saint responded without hesitation, "Yes, I am," to which everyone in attendance seemed stunned. Then after a brief pause, he continued, "And so are you. The only difference between you and I," he said, "is that I know it, and you doubt it." You are a divine creation of God. You can never be separate from that which created you. If you can think of God as the ocean and yourself as a container, you may find it helpful in moments of doubt, or when you feel lost or alone, to remember that you are a container of God. When you dip your glass into the ocean, what you have is a glass of God. It's not as big or as strong, but it's still God. As long as you refuse to believe otherwise, you won't feel separate from God. Think of a drop of water from the ocean of abundance that's separated from its source. Separated from its source, that droplet of water will ultimately evaporate and return to its source. The point is that while it's in its liquid form, disconnected from its source, it loses the power of its source. This is the essence of the secret of always treasuring your divinity. While you're separated in your mind from your source, you lose your divine power, the power of your source. Just like the drop of water, you too will change form and ultimately return to your source. As long as you feel disconnected from God, you lose the power of your source, which is the unlimited power to create, to be miraculous, and to experience the joy of being alive. The drop of water disconnected from its divine source symbolizes your ego. What is your ego? Your ego is nothing more than an idea that you carry around with you everywhere you go. This idea tells you that you are the sum total of what you have, or what you do, and who you are. Ego insists that you are a separate being, that your personality and your body are your essence, and that you are in competition with every other ego to get your share of the pie, which is limited and finite. Therefore, ego asserts you must be wary of others who also want all that they feel they're entitled to. Consequently, ego leads you to believe that there are enemies to be wary of at all times. Since you're separate from them, you must disdain cooperating with them for fear of being cheated. The result is that you have to distrust everyone. Your ego also tells you that you're separate from everything that's missing in your life, and so you must spend a great deal of energy chasing after what's missing. Moreover, because who you are, according to ego, is your body and your personality, you're separate from God. God is outside of you, a force to fear, just like all of those external forces attempting to control you. So you beg this external force to provide you with special powers to overcome all of those other egos who are trying so hard to snare what is rightfully yours. Your ego keeps you in a constant state of fear, worry, anxiety, and stress. It implores you to be better than everyone around you. It beseeches you to push harder and to get God on your side. In short, it maintains your separate status from God and allows you to be terrified of your own divinity. You are a piece of God. You are a divine creation, a being of light who showed up here as a human being in the exact moment you were supposed to. Your body will depart at precisely the right moment as well. But you're not that body you behold, nor are you its personality or any of its possessions and accomplishments. You are the beloved, a miracle, a part of the eternal perfection, a piece of the divine intelligence that supports everything and everyone on this planet. In a world in which this divine intelligence creates everything, there can be no accidents. Every time you experience fear, self-rejection, anxiety, guilt, or hate, you're denying your divinity and succumbing to the influences of that insidious ego mind that has convinced you of your disconnection to God. Author U.S. Anderson wrote an inspiring book many years ago called 3 Magic Words. Mr. Anderson writes about the ability to become a miracle worker and to live up to the ideal of the promise made by Jesus Christ. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater things. The author doesn't reveal what the 3 magic words are until the end of the book, when the reader discovers that the words are, "You are God." Not God in the sense of above all others and better than everyone else, but in the sense of being eternally connected to your source, the ever-present power of love that never abandons you and never runs dry. You can rely on this source if you remind yourself that it includes you at all times. Do I pray as if my prayers are already realized? The traditional means of prayer that I was exposed to throughout my life involved asking for something and hoping that an external God would provide me with the answers for my wishes. A close friend and colleague of mine, Greg Braden, who is also a student and admirer of Neville, writes in his penetrating book, The Isaiah Effect, "Rather than asking that the outcome of our prayer come to pass, we acknowledge our role as an active part of creation and give thanks for what we are certain that we have created. Whether we see immediate results or not, our thanks acknowledge that somewhere in creation our prayer has already been fulfilled." Unquote. This may appear to contradict the ask and you shall receive version of prayer that you are likely exposed to. It may feel new, but it is so important that you acknowledge your own divine role in the fulfillment of your spiritually aligned desires for yourself and others. A vision is within your imagination as you enter into your sacred practice of prayer, one that is so strong you can already feel its fulfillment in your own body. To once again quote Neville, quote, "The moment you accept the wish as an accomplished fact, the subconscious finds means for its realization. To pray successfully, then, you must yield to the wish, that is, feel the wish fulfilled." Unquote. Being a piece of God, and therefore altogether God, as a part of the entire process of creation, you become an active participant in your own private prayerful moments. Consider shutting out your senses completely, along with all of the evidence they continually place before you, because you are, in your prayers, going to attempt to feel what they, that is, your senses, will most assuredly deny. Perhaps describing what I do will help you. When I pray, I always yield to the wish that I have for myself, my loved ones, and the entire planet, and all of its inhabitants, rather than attempting to force my wish or to have God take over and do my bidding for me. In my mind, I see my wishes as accomplished, and I experience what that feels like, savoring the feeling in my body. I stay in a profound state of gratitude. My prayer is without effort. Rather, it is felt as an already accomplished fact. I then act as if what it is I am praying for is my truth, even if my senses and all those about me give evidence to the contrary. I'm not asking for special favors because I do not believe in an ego-constructed deity who plays favorites, or who has the ability to heal everyone, yet withholds these favors because he or she is looking for something from me. I'm a part of the entire business of creation. I am divine consciousness, and I never forget it. I know I have the capacity to make conscious contact with my source of creation. There's no fear of insulting a mythical God. In the I Am Discourses, Saint Germain says, quote, "I say to the students in all sincerity, there is no possible way of attaining a quality or a desired attribute without claiming it." Unquote. With this in mind, I claim peace, health, happiness, joy, prosperity for everyone I know in my life. I claim peace and contentment for myself, for humanity, and the entire world. In my prayers, I give thanks for my mysterious role in all of this, and I reprogram my subconscious mind so I feel this in my body. I leave my sacred prayer time and go about the activities of my life, whatever they may be, with this feeling within me. I am not discouraged by what my senses might be reporting. I have left all ideas of time and timing behind, and I trust in the I Am presence that is my true identity. Often at night I engage in prayerful visualization. I visualize faces of people I know who have crossed over and left the outer world, people I've seen in the media but have never met, and people I knew as a child. I surround them with love. I see the love, and I feel it for them and myself. I am calling in the I Am presence. As the I Am Discourses teach, quote, "The undesirable moves out, and the I Am presence moves in, and you find that you have truly entered into a new world, filled with the happiness and perfection you have always known existed somewhere within your own heart." Unquote. This is prayer to me, and when I emerge from these moments of prayer, It's as if I've attended a movie and seen the successful end of the film, even though I may not have been shown precisely how that ending was achieved. This is not only the great power of prayer, it is also the power of a wishes-fulfilled life. No ego, no force, no special privileges, simply an awareness of the power that exists within us when we assume that what we pray for, always aligned with our highest selves, is a completed fact. We are, each and every one of us, a participant in this dance of creation.
What I call authentic prayer is inviting divine desire to express itself through myself. It expresses my experience of oneness with the divine energy. This may sound like a radical or even blasphemous notion, but is the source of all spiritual traditions. Here's a few examples. In Christianity, they say the kingdom of heaven is within you. In Islam, they say those who know themselves know their God. In Buddhism, they say, look within, you are the Buddha. In Vedanta, they say Atman, or individual consciousness, and Brahman, universal consciousness, are one. Yoga says God dwells within you as you. Confucianism, heaven, earth, and human are of one body. And in the Upanishads, the ancient texts of the Hindus, by understanding the self, all this universe is known. Trust, then, is the cornerstone of my praying, and with it comes the peace that is the essence of manifesting.
The famous Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard once said that once you label me, you negate me. And our past is filled with labels about what we can and can't do. I'm not very good at this. I'm not athletic. I'm not musical. I'm not able to do certain kinds of activities. I don't have a good memory. I'm not very good at mathematics. I've never been good at relating to other people. I'm shy. I'm nervous. I'm clumsy. These are all labels from the wake, from our past. And all of them are just things that you have used as an explanation or as an excuse for why you don't move into a different place in your life. And they all revolve around this thing called failure. I tried them, I wasn't good at them, therefore I failed. And when you give up your personal history, you give up the concept of failure. It is, again, another illusion. You have never failed at anything in your life. Everything you've ever done has produced a result. You are just out there producing results. The issue isn't whether you fail. The issue is, what do I do and what have I done with the results that I have produced? So that if you go to, I love that story that I heard not too long ago of a little boy who was walking, and you know how little boys do it? I used to do it all the time. And you take a softball and you throw it up into the air, and then you have a bat, which is often a stick, it was for us, and you swing at it like this, and the little boy throws the ball up into the air, and he swings, and he misses. So he picks the ball up again, and he walks a little further, and nobody's around, and he throws the ball up into the air, and he swings again, and the ball falls to the ground. He misses. Then he picks up the ball again, and he looks around, and nobody's there, and he throws it up into the air, and he swings his stick. It misses again and hits the floor, the ground. And he responds, "What a pitcher." It's the idea that you can never fail at anything. And I can't tell you how many endless clients that I have told, you have never failed at anything in your life. If you weigh 300 pounds, and you've weighed 300 pounds for the last 20 years, you have just produced enormous results. And the question isn't, why am I such a failure? Why have I always been obese? Why have I always been these terrible things that are back there in the past that I'm bonded to, and now coming up with reasons to explain it away? Well, my mother, we have this, and then I'm doing it in response to that, and this is because of that. And you can come up with an endless number of reasons. I was talking about this last night, that my brother and I both lived in the same foster homes in the same orphanage for years. And my one brother is very shy and very reserved and has had a great deal of difficulty. And I've been out there, very public and very outgoing and so on. And both of us can explain our behavior on the basis of the same experience. Obviously, I have self-confidence because I never had anybody to give me confidence when I was young. And I was always going from place to place, so I had to go within and rely upon myself. And my brother would say, obviously, I don't have any confidence because I didn't have anybody to give me any confidence when I was young. There was nobody there, so that's the way my life is. And you can explain anything away. But if you're that 300-pounder, you have produced results. The question is, what are you doing with the results that you've produced? What are you going to do about that? Are you going to be a great pitcher and remind yourself of this is a different way to look at that? Or are you going to tell yourself that my personal history is such that there's nothing I can do about it? If you want to walk the extra mile, the path less traveled, give up your personal history. If you don't have a story, you won't have to live up to it. And you can live every moment in the only place where you'll ever come to know what it's like to be connected and united with God. It's the only place God ever is or ever has been. Right here, now. Don't use your weaknesses, your struggles, your difficulties, the things that happen to you as a calling card. Sharing it with everybody else and using it as a way to get sympathy for yourself. If you've been through a divorce, if you're a widow, if you've been through cancer, if you've been whatever it is, don't use that as a way to get attention for yourself. Because what it'll do is it'll keep you bonded back here. And it'll also give you more of an opportunity to repeat and attract the very thing that you're still upset about.
Sounds have power. Now, again, this often will fly in the face of that which we have been taught by our ego mind. The beauty of sound is that there are different dimensions. There's the dimension of the world of form that we all are experiencing, that we're all in. All right, what our bodies and our chairs and our beds and our houses and all of that. There's that world of form, and that's a vibration. It vibrates at a certain speed. And then there's the other level of way, way, way up past that called the etheric level, which is another vibration, the world of thought and the world of spirit. In between there's an intermediary dimension. And that intermediary dimension between the world of form and the world of spirit or thought is the vibration of sound. And sound is our access to those higher, faster vibrations of speed and thought. So that even though we can't see sound, we can measure it pretty well with scopes and so on. We can tell how fast the vibrations go. Through sound, we can leave the world of form and use it as a vehicle for getting to that level of divine intelligence, which is vibrating at a very, very, like trillions and trillions and trillions of times per second, versus sound, which is between 30,000 vibrations and, say, 16,000 vibrations, whatever it is. So think about sounds like this. And certain sounds, therefore, have different capacities than other sounds. And there are certain sounds that are associated with this ability to be able to manifest. And if you learn these sounds and practice these sounds and meditate to these sounds, you will begin to access and make contact with the higher vibrational frequencies beyond the world of form. And so what Guruji explained to me is that there are two essential chakras in the body to be concerned with in terms of manifesting. One is called the root chakra, the base chakra,
or the sex center. And the root chakra then has a channel, an internal invisible channel that goes from the base chakra to the third eye. And the third eye is the place that is located on your forehead between your eyebrows. Okay? And you think of this as a chakra or as an opening or as a computer terminal, if you will, that has been closed over. And to be able to radiate out energy from the third eye while meditating and sending that energy out into the world is one of the ways that we practice manifestation. And he said that there are two sounds to think about. One sound is the sound of creation. And the sound of creation, it's interesting, he encouraged me to look up the names that we have come up with throughout history for the Creator. Ra, Krishna, Rama, Buddha, Wakantanka, Adonai, Brahma, Siddha, Ahura Mazda, Shiva, Jehovah, Yahweh, God, Atto, Allah. And what is the sound that is with each and every one of these? The sound of Ah. This sound of creation, the sound of Ah, is the sound of God. And it is a vibration like everything else that is mediation between the world of matter and the world of spirit. And it is the only sound that you make that requires no effort. As I open my mouth and make the sound Ah, notice that if I move anything, I change the sound. But if I move nothing, I have the sound of Ah, and it's the only sound that requires no effort. So it's Ah. Now as I move it, do you see what happens? The minute that I move anything, the sound stops. It's not an accident that this sound is in the names for all creators, because sounds originated with ancient sages vocalizing what they heard in their meditations. This sound of Ah. It is the repetition of the sound of God. And I'm going to put this energy of Ah out into the universe. And as I do, I am going to attract to myself through the power of creation. The way that you unite your mind, which is on the left-hand side, with the self, which is on the right-hand side. The way that you do this is through the use of the sound of Ah. There's also another sound, and this second sound is the sound of all that has been manifested in the world. This is your meditation of gratitude. If you take anything in the physical plane and reduce it down to its basic sound and put it on a scope and measure that sound, you will hear the sound of Om. The sound of Om. It is the universal sound. It is the sound of gratitude. In the evening meditation, you also repeat the sound of Om. But you don't ask for anything. You just send out your gratitude for all that has manifested in your life. And you will feel an enormous sense of peace and joy.
If you wish to become a divine immortal angel, that is, to live your life at meaning from a God-realized perspective, then restore the angelic qualities of your being through virtue and service. The Tao Te Ching, Te means virtue. This, and I underline this emphatically, this is the only way to gain the attention of the immortals who teach the methods of energy enhancement and integration that are necessary to reach the divine realm. This is the only way to gain the attention of the immortals, of the angels, of the divine intelligence, of that which has gone before you, of God, whatever you want to call it. You know that there's guidance out there. You know that when you have passion for something, that passion is really the presence of God within you.
when you feel something so strongly that you can't ignore it, that you just have to be it. I hope you're thinking about what your calling is, just what it is, regardless of whether you've actualized it, fulfilled it, whether it's an empty pipe dream, whatever it is. Just think about it. Just think about it. What it is that you feel in here that just won't go away, that calls you to something. And if you want to gain the attention and get the help, the guidance that you want, this is what Carl Jung meant when he talked about synchronicity, that as you elevate, as you get closer and closer to this divine realm, what happens is that the right people suddenly began to start showing up. The right idea begins to come along. What I call in the film, the quantum moment begins to happen, that vivid, surprising, benevolent, enduring idea that comes to you. Now, how does the guidance get here? These angelic teachers cannot be sought out. In other words, you can sit here and meditate all day long and sit here and pray and hope and ask for the guidance of these teachers to come to you, and according to Lao Tzu, you'll never find them. The only way to gain the attention of the immortals who reach the methods of energy enhancement and integration is to start living your life through virtue and service. And when I made that shift and began to realize that my life was really about serving, because that's all you can do. If you can imagine God with hands, just try to imagine God with hands. And ask yourself, what does God do with his hands? What is the only thing that God can do with his hands? The God that you know. The Tao, the source that is responsible for all of creation and welcomes all of creation back. What does God do with God's hands? Creation is already complete, as you'll hear this afternoon. It's already complete, and it's just constantly giving, isn't it? It's just about giving. Does God ever say, I want something back from you? Yeah, I give you life, you got to give me this. But God just says, here is life. Here are the birds, here are the trees, here's the sky, here's the water, here's the ocean, here's the universe. Here it is. What do I want back? Nothing. You know, Hafiz, the great Persian poet, said, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Just think what a love like that can do. It lights up the whole world. It almost sounds too simple, but when I made that shift, it started chasing after me. And it always has chased after me, but my ego would get in the way and think that this was about me. But when I really was able to suspend that ego, these angelic teachers cannot be sought out. It is they who seek out the students. Now here it comes. This is the part that blows me away. I've been leading up to this. When you succeed in connecting your energy, who you are, with the divine realm, which is what this whole program has been about, reconnecting you to the divine realm, the one that you originated from, the one to which you will return, through higher awareness and the practice of undiscriminating virtue, which is what the Tao Te Ching is, the transmission of the ultimate subtle truths will follow. This is the path that all angels take to the divine realm. That all of those of us who would like to get to this place of living a life of meaning, this is the path that they take. When you succeed in allowing yourself to live from a place of higher awareness, the ego and higher awareness can't coexist. Eckhart Tolle writes a lot about this. Higher awareness is really thinking like God thinks. That's all you have to do. I said that I would like to talk about the three levels of consciousness, A being individual consciousness or ego consciousness. And I said that there are two people inside each and every one of us. The first one is the ego. The second person inside each and every one of us is what I call the sacred or the higher self. And this sacred or higher self really doesn't care whether we win or lose or how much we get or who we're better than or how much we have. It's not interested in that. This part of us that lives in every single one of us only wants one thing. It wants us to be at peace. At peace. And it wants to choose peace. As it says in the Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. I remind myself that every day when I drive my children to school in the morning and they're fighting over who called shotgun and who gets to sit in the front and who gets to push the buttons and who listens to the rap music and who's that, Daddy's my turn this time, and they're going back and forth, and I just remind them, I can choose peace rather than this. And I'll say, look out or I'm going to push my button. And they say, okay. They don't want to hear that crappy music or whatever. All right? The ability to choose peace. One of the selections that was most profound in my life that I wrote an essay about for 60 Days to Enlightenment in Wisdom of the Ages was from Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet, from a selection called the Gitanjali, which won the Nobel Prize for Poetry and Literature in 1927. He said, I went out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame, but I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. The ego just wants to be right. The higher self wants to be kind, wants to be at peace. And if you can just begin to shift that, just ask yourself, as what I'm about to say, I always tell people this in counseling groups and so on, that there are 4 words, that if you learn these 4 words, they'll eliminate all conflict in all of your relationships. These 4 words are, you're right about that. No matter what it is somebody says to you, you give them that. You're right about that. Someone says, you're really a jerk. So, you're right about that. Because that doesn't make somebody right. She'll say something to me, you're supposed to be home at 7:15 and it's now 6:30. There was a time when I used to say, wait a minute, you're not my mother. I don't have to explain to you when I come home. I'm the one that's out working. And who do you think buys all these, there was all that ego stuff that was a part of my life. You've all heard those before, right? Now I just simply say, honey, she said, don't hold those 4 fingers up. I hate it when you do that. Now I notice she holds the 4 fingers up, but she's doing it one at a time. She's going like, But it's the idea that just as you're about to respond to somebody, instead of saying, well, I need to be right and I need to prove myself, I'm just going to stop. I am no longer. And every single person that operates at these higher levels that I'm describing here tonight, that I've known, they have no need to be in charge, to be right, to be dominant, to be they allow themselves to realize, as the story of Buddha, when he had someone following him around for 3 days, and all they ever did was criticize him and find fault with him all the time. Everything he said, everything he did, they found, and always what would come out of him would be this peace and this love. And finally, after 3 days, the man who was criticizing him said, I don't understand. I've done nothing but insult you for 3 days and make a fool of you, and you always respond with kindness and love. He said, how can you do that? And the Buddha said these magical words. When someone offers you a gift and you don't accept that gift, to whom does the gift belong? So if someone offers you a gift of their anger, their hatred, their insults, but you don't accept it, who owns the gift? And why would you go around being upset about something that belongs to someone else? It's not yours in the first place. That's a higher level of awareness. That's being able to choose peace.
You see, when you get enough inner grace or inner peace or serenity, whatever you want to call it, when you feel really positive about yourself, it's almost impossible for you to be controlled and manipulated by anybody else. I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, I had to get on an airplane and fly to Chicago. Now, I got on the airplane at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Fort Lauderdale. The plane took off and flew for 30 minutes, and they couldn't retract the landing gear. They were stuck in the down position, so they had to land the plane in Miami, go back and land it in Miami because they had longer runways. It wasn't an emergency, but I wasn't convinced that they had that foam out there on the runways because they were just seeing if their foam equipment worked. They were trying to convince us there was no emergency and that those ambulances weren't just standing by in case anybody fainted while they watched us land, that there was, in fact, some emergency. I watched people around me on the plane when we were having to do this, and some people were panicked and fearful and scared. There was one couple that jumped and screamed, and there was a lot of interesting reactions, a lot of ashen looks, and a lot of very scared people. And I looked at myself, and I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of that. It was okay. And I knew I was going to be okay, and I saw myself being okay. It wasn't that I tried very hard not to be fearful. It was that inside of me, there is something that has replaced that fear, and that is called grace or serenity. And it was okay. It was just simply all right, and I was fine. In fact, I was effective. I calmed down the guy next to me. I looked around to see where the emergency exits were, because I wanted to know how to get out of this place. I used my mind in a situation where other people might elect panic. I was electing to be conscious, to be intelligent, to save myself if necessary, and I wasn't the least bit afraid. And I know I would have been afraid at an earlier time in my life. That fear, that potential for fear, has been replaced by peace and fulfillment and knowing that when it's my turn, and that's okay too, and that I'm not afraid of any of that. So we landed, okay, and everything was fine. And there was a computer part that was missing that wouldn't give the right signal for the landing gear to go up. So they had to replace the part, and they canceled the flight. And 192 people were on this plane, and it was full. Right? There wasn't an empty seat. It was the last week after Easter break. There's no seats out of South Florida at all. Right? They announced, the first thing they did was announce that there would be nobody getting a seat out of South Florida because you just can't get one on all the airlines. They're all filled up. And you probably will have to be here a couple of days until we can do something about it. And they even announced that they weren't going to put us up in a hotel. There was like all of these negative things. And I watched the people around me. Now, a minute ago, they were worried about whether they were going to be alive. Now, suddenly, they're alive and they're relieved about that. Now they're angry because the plane isn't going to take off or they're going to have a replacement. And so there's all this anger. Now, I believe in looking for solutions, never looking for problems. So when the plane landed, they said, no one can get off the airplane. But I knew they probably weren't talking to me, okay? Because as soon as it landed, the door opened, I went out and called my secretary and said, I have to give a speech tomorrow morning in Chicago, and there's a lot of people depending on me to be there. There's 500 people waiting to hear me speak, and we've set up this date in advance. I see myself in Chicago. I know I'll be there. 191 other people didn't believe they would be in Chicago and acted just that way. They were angry, they were upset, they were yelling at the people, they were letting their blood pressure get out of control, and they weren't doing anything. I said to my secretary, I will call you back in 15 minutes. She was in Fort Lauderdale. I'll call you back collect in 15 minutes. Just make sure I have a seat on a plane, no matter what it costs or what the inconvenience or what it get me a seat. At the moment that she called, somebody the moment before had canceled on another airline a first-class seat. They had just canceled, they weren't going. And I was able to get that seat because the person that she called handled the cancellation, and she just replaced me on there, okay, instead of going through the whole list. And I had a seat on a flight that was 5 hours away. But I still had a seat on a flight to get in much later than I anticipated. And I went down and got my boarding pass, and I was, out of 192 people, there was only one that made it to Chicago. And I was that one, not because I'm smarter than everybody else, or because I know anything that other people don't know, or because I'm better than anyone else. It was because I look for solutions, not for problems, and I refuse to be victimized by my need to be right through using anger and being upset and so on. When you are able to visualize yourself doing something, you start acting on that visualization or that image. You're able to make things happen when you're looking for solutions that you can never make happen when you're more preoccupied with being a victim. I was in Redondo Beach, California, just the other day, and I was going to speak out there at a church in the evening to a large group. I had to rent a car, and I was driving through the town, looking for the Palos Verdes Hotel where I was assigned to stay. But I didn't know how to get there. And I had an idea of where it was, but I wasn't sure. And you've all been in that position. A tourist in a beach town looking for your place. You know, I had my turn signal on, and I had it on for a block or so, and then realized that it's 2 more blocks up. I took it off and waited. And there was somebody behind me who was having a myocardial infarction over my behavior. I am blasting on his horn and so on. And then I looked up into the mirror, and I could see him pounding on the dashboard of his car in anger. It's like, how dare you? And I wanted to stop the car, you know, and get out and say, everything's going to be fine. This is all going to work out just right. Just, you know, I'm going to be turning in another few blocks, and you can go on. Your life's going to be fine. And I ask you, the people here tonight in this room, what do you think caused that? What do you think created that kind of reaction in this person, where a stranger in a rented car that even says rented car on the back of it could go to that level of hatred and anger over a simple behavior of another human being, and a very normal behavior at that? What do you think caused that? You think it was me that caused that in him? You think it was my car, my behavior, my driving? It's none of that, see? That's really the only message that I have, is that who you are is the result of how you choose to process your life and the world and how it's presented to you. And until you understand that nobody out there in this planet, in this universe, has the power, the control to make you be or think or act or behave or emote in any way other than the way that you choose. And that capacity for thinking, that capacity for thought, it's the thing that most of us think is the least important part of our consciousness. We don't pay that much attention to it. We pay attention to this, the packaging, the body, and we evaluate our life based upon what rules apply to the body. And the rules, or the laws, or whatever you want to call them, that apply to your body, to your form, are very, very different than the rules and laws, principles that apply to the other part of you, the invisible part of you, if you will. And tonight's talk is really about that part of you, which is where you live. There's a man named Bucky Fuller. I don't know how many of you have heard of Buckminster Fuller. Brilliant man. He died a couple of years ago in his 90s, who worked with me on the Hunger Project and our efforts to end world hunger around the globe. He was a mathematician and a philosopher. He's the inventor of the geodesic dome. Brilliant man. He almost committed suicide when he was 30 years old. He went right down to the act of actually buying a gun. At the worst part of his life, made a decision that he could do something with this. He could turn it around and benefit from it. And he made major, major contributions. One of the things he said to me once, he said, Wayne, never forget that who you are, the human being that you are, that 99% of who you are is invisible, untouchable, unsmellable, impervious to the senses. That this form that you live in represents only 1% of your humanity. And 99% of your humanity is something other than form, whatever it is. And hopefully when we leave here tonight, you'll have not only a grasp of that, but perhaps some methods and ways of really living that, of really understanding that. The concept of form is a key word and a key notion, and I want you to think about it a lot. F-O-R-M, form, and all the rules that apply to it. And as I'll come back to it many, many times tonight. Until you can go beyond the boundaries of form, you can never awaken. You can never really live the life that you're capable of living and create the miracles that you're capable of creating until you absolutely, truly get a hold of that humanity behind your form, whatever that may be, whatever it is, however you define it. It's a great place that I'm speaking about. It's something very different than just being positive. and just enjoying life and not being victimized by other people and thinking well of yourself and all of that. That's all fine and good, and those are almost elementary steps. It's much more of almost a spiritual message without the religion. It works like knowing that somehow you, who you are, this individual that has shown up here tonight, is someone who is much grander and much greater, much more divine, much more perfect, much more fantastic than just this form that you've showed up in.
That what our life really is all about, it defies the world of form, it defies the world of linear. And yet we spend almost all of our energy and our time here, in this part of our consciousness, in form, believing that this is who we are. When you learn to go into your mind, when you learn that your mind is really a place that you can visit and exquisitely touch the face of God, you can remove the tension and stress and everything else that's troublesome in your life when you give yourself time to experience your true humanity. That concept of understanding that universal intelligence that is a part of our consciousness is not just something for mystics and people to go in loincloths and contemplate in caves. It's for us. It's for every one of us in the practice of our daily lives, in whatever business we're in.